I always hate how it's like a start to conversation and then a stop and then it's just the way it is.
No worries.
Here we are.
Yep.
You played at the Ryman a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
What was that experience like?
It's always cool. The Ryman has, just from a sort of a music nerd POV, it has that right amount of what the room gives back to you. You know what I mean? I guess you could call that decay or reverb or echo. But it's just so sympathetic, you know, especially for sort of acoustic music. You know, I think this is my 6th time playing in that room, and every time I'm just like, yeah, this is what music sounds like, you know. And
so
also
it's
having
just as cool.
Yeah.
Every time.
It is. I try to be very deliberate about taking my time.
Yeah.
Walking in and you know, I always take pictures like with the phone or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who cares? Yeah, it's rad. It's super cool. The thing about that space is that the audience also knows they're at a cool place. And so there's just immediately like a built-in vibe that everybody knows this is only happening with this combination of folks, you know, musicians and audience members at this moment. And so there's a real appreciation for the presence of that thing, that event, that moment, without being too woo about it. It's always just feels special, you know. It's also cool because the folks that you play with also feel that. They're like, yeah, man, the Ryman, you know, my mom's coming or my dad's coming, you know, all the band folks have. The guest list is always mighty.
Event.
And with Nashville, you know, being the home base for so many of us as touring musicians, it's always a little funky to be playing a hometown show because other cats come check you out at the Ryman, you know what I mean? So you kind of want to like really have it together. So there's a little bit of that kind of pressure too, which can be a good thing, you know. But it was great. I always feel very comfortable in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, just a few days later, too, you were at Trailhead in Knoxville.
The next day. Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine
that
dichotomy.
I was definitely more nervous for that.
Interesting. Okay, why? Tell me why.
Because I'm leading the band,
Yeah.
and I'm singing a few of my tunes, and it's incumbent upon me to keep the set rolling, to keep the fun factor, you know, up.
Yeah.
You know? But also because I was playing with 2 of my favorite musicians, I shouldn't be nervous to play with them because they're gracious and they're friends. And it was really fun. But still, you know, it's like if I were comparing the nerves level, neither of them were high, but it was definitely a little louder for the Knoxville gig.
Yeah, the fuzz.
It's also my hometown.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm always like, oh, man, I have to crush it at home. You know what I mean?
That's so fascinating.
Yeah. It's just my own mind talk. You know, It is what it is.
Is it because you're afraid your parents will be there? Is it
no, my parents are also like, my dad doesn't live close anymore, but he does come to performances, whether I'm touring or sometimes when he's in town and if I'm playing in town. But my mom's super supportive, and the feedback that I get, my parents have always been, you know, that's great that you're a musician. That's not why you're great. You know, you're not why you're great to us. And that's a really, really lovely permission to be given by anybody, but especially by the folks that you grew up with as providers.
Yeah,
you know?
Always trying to make them proud and stuff.
Yeah.
And then they're just like, no, you just have to exist. That's all we need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is driving me crazy. Okay, thanks.
I was waiting for a spot to stop you guys.
Cool.
Yeah, you
Sorry.
should be, let me
Okay,
just
I hope that didn't come across as angry, but I was just like, I'm going to have a fucking seizure.
Keep
Cody and I were just
fiddling with
texting
your
each other.
pen. Just keep doing the pen. That'll help.
Keep Val Kilmer in
We were
here.
I'll
we were
do
just
this.
Like, how do we like stop them?
Cool.
You should be good now. Sorry.
Okay,
about that.
no worries, man. I also wanted to say, does anybody else know this is happening?
Yeah,
Okay.
we didn't want to turn you guys off. So
No.
How do we do this without throwing things off from like if I hit the app, I know it's gonna just freak out.
Yeah.
So
all good.
speaking of your parents too, you played in a band with them growing up.
We had a family
You
band.
and all of your family.
Yeah, Mountain Soul.
Holy shit! Can you tell
Holy
me
shit,
about
man.
that?
Yeah, so I guess it sort of grew out of mom and dad always kind of singing around the house, and we had this big songbook, and it was full of myriad folk songs, murder ballads and bluegrass stuff, but also like Nancy Griffith and Townes Van Zandt and, you know, great stuff. And they were always singing around the house, and I was getting into guitar playing, and though I didn't think that music was cool, it was an opportunity to play.
Yeah.
And the opportunity to make music always wins, you know. So we started playing as a trio, and I would sometimes try banjo, and I would play guitar. But then my two brothers started playing upright bass, and they were in middle school at the time. And the joke is, and it's actually kind of accurate, that Corey knew all the songs in like one key, and Jacob knew all the songs in another. But they would switch off,
just like, based on whichever one.
Yeah,
fit.
whichever.
Yeah,
tune. Do you know this one? Yeah, please.
Okay.
But I actually think that they were gaming us. I think that they both knew, and they just didn't care. They wanted to like do whatever was fun besides play.
Right.
And they were like, "All right, your turn. Now I'm going to go outside at Horton Store, which is this funky venue way up in Hawkins County, and go, you know, whatever." So yeah, we had a family band. We played a lot of like just really small, like volunteer fire halls, and there was one gas station we played at in Strawberry Plains where we had to push some tanning beds out of the way for us to play the gig. Until my dad choked on a ham biscuit, and I saved his life because by the time he got to me to do the Heimlich, he was literally purple.
Holy shit!
Yeah, that's not really really important to the story, but I just
no,
wanted
but
to
now I
want to
know it.
Yeah. Well, I kind of told you he choked
Was
on a
that
ham
it?
biscuit. That's
That was it?
It's a pretty fucking bluegrass. But we used to play up in Cumberland Gap at a place called Webb's Country Kitchen, and we played in Greenville. We played cakewalks a lot. That's how I grew up doing stuff. We'd run down to Chattanooga and play the Signal Mountain Opry. Mm-hmm. But we eventually got to a level where we were allowed to perform on the WDVX local licks at 6, which is when WDVX, which is a local radio station for the uninitiated of Knoxville.
Just so everybody knows.
Right. It was in a camper, and so we go up to the campground, and then we played Camper Fest, and so I kind of got into that scene a little bit, and then from there it was seeing the upright bass professor at UT play, because I had gotten into bass playing on the electric bass, because I auditioned on guitar for this rock band in Morristown, where I'm from. And they're like, "Well, you suck, but we could use a bass player." So that's how that went.
That was so nice of them.
Yeah.
So
and
kind.
I'd played trombone in band growing up, and so I knew all the bass clef pitches, and so I taught myself how to read on the electric bass, and then auditioned for All East Jazz Band and got in, and then that sort of allowed me to have some sort of gumption with which to contact Rusty Holloway at the University of Tennessee here in Knoxville, and I started taking electric bass lessons with him the second half of my senior year in high school, and he was like, "You should come study music at UT." And I was like, "Yes, I should." But I seeing him, and then seeing a guy who's from Oak Ridge called Edgar Meyer, seeing those guys play the double bass, I was like, that's what I want to do. And so that's when I really found it, and I started playing upright bass, which is how I make my living. I started doing that when I started college, which is actually fairly late to start a violin family instrument. I later learned whenever I started hearing the technical proficiency of other bass players that I was encountering at some of the venues we played in festivals. And that was a bit of a rude awakening for my ego, and probably a good one. But anyway, you asked about the family band, and I gave you the entire history of myself.
You just keep going. That's the thing, though.
Well, that's usually how these things go.
Folks
ask me. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's my next question, too.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
Perfect. When did you feel like you knew you were going to be a professional musician?
I guess it was in high school, because I was coming up to Knoxville every weekend to play with a blues band.
Yeah.
And then that was usually on like Saturday nights.
Okay.
And then Friday nights were almost exclusively reserved for my parents, and then we had the band a little more fleshed out at that point. So we were playing together on Friday nights, and so I was a professional. That was my job. In high school, I was a professional musician. I was like, when I found the music thing, it was like, oh, this is what I'm good at, because I sucked at school and everything else, and I would try to apply myself, and I could just never keep it together for more than 3 weeks at a time. It was a real shameful feeling.
Yeah.
And when music came along, and it was like something, inevitably you compare yourself, to those around you, and especially in a band context, like a marching band or a concert band context. Well, your first chair trombone or your second chair, or you win the audition for All East or All State bass.
So much
you know what I mean?
hierarchy. It's
Yeah,
so
there's
useless.
a lot. It is a little bit useless, but it's also helpful to qualify the kinds of things that you might work on to become more technically proficient, right? And so doing that and achieving with that was like, there's a hook upon which I can hang a hat. Mm-hmm. And so that is dangerous. I'm sure we'll get into this, but it encourages this idea that your art is your identity, and it's the metric by which your self-worth is gauged. Mm-hmm. And that's possibly deadly. So anyway, but it was really early days, and and my dad was like, "You take a business class or two, just I was like, "No, And I accidentally / on purpose made my college experience very conservatory-like, even though it was University of Tennessee, which has a decent music program. Yeah. It's definitely not like a known thing for that, but it is these days, especially on the jazz side. The jazz faculty at UT now is kind of nuts.
Like good way, bad way?
Good way.
Cool.
Yeah,
got it.
Yeah,
good. Just want to make sure.
Good way. Yeah, like go listen to Greg Tardy play saxophone, and if you're not changed by that, then you're not feeling things.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was just always from, I don't know, post-pubescence, the thing.
Yeah.
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 So you told me earlier that you played at Abbey Road.
I did.
You got to record there.
Yeah, this was last March. No. Yeah, it was March. It was March.
Time is weird anyway, so
it was March.
I won't hold it against you if you're like, that was actually like 6 years ago.
Well, no, I go back and forth to the UK to play for a couple of different things. And so went over in January to play with a group called the Transatlantic Sessions that I play with every winter. We put on a series of concerts that are all based around Celtic connections in Glasgow, in Scotland. Eric Clapton happens to be a friend of one of the musical directors and also a fan of the production. And he comes to our performances pretty much yearly. And I've met him a couple of times. And this time he came and he wanted to sit in because he wanted to. And he really likes it. And he's like, is there any, because he had asked if he could be one of the featured artists. The way the Transatlantic Sessions works is there's 4 or 5 or 6 artists from around the globe who are the featured acts. And then there is the same house band, for which I am the bassist. And we all get together and we arrange tunes together and we practice for 2 days in Glasgow. And then we play 2 nights in Glasgow at the Royal Philharmonic Hall. And then we tour the UK and we play the Liverpool Phil and we play in London and whatever. And so we do this tour, and Clapton came and sat in, and he wanted to do a song for Jeff Beck, who had just passed away, which was kind of nuts. And so we did While My Guitar Gently Weeps with Eric Clapton, which was crazy. And so I and the musical director I mentioned before, who I tour with here, is called Jerry Douglas. He's a slide guitar player, and he's known for that, and he's really well recorded. We were flying straight to the Caribbean to get on a cruise ship, the Americana cruise. And so I was like frantically packing all of my shit on the stage in London to get into a hire car to go to Heathrow to fly to San Martin.
Holy shit.
And during my packing up, everybody else was partying with Eric Clapton.
Right.
And so we get done, and they're like, hey, did you hear the good news? I'm like, no. What? My car's here?
Yeah.
And no, Clapton wants us to come record with him. I'm like, sure, cool. And it's just like, whatever. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm exhausted. Can we go?
Right.
Somewhere there's a continental breakfast with my name on it.
That's the priority here.
Well, I mean, the touring thing, it's like, where am I going to eat, sleep, and shit?
Right.
So then Jerry and I in the car to the airport were talking about it, and I was like, that'd be awesome. I'd love to do that. Of course, I would love to record with Eric Clapton. But I was in the back of my mind, and I've just sort of cultivated this callous over the time that I've been doing this. It's like I believe it when I see it. Mm-hmm. I've had some opportunities to audition or my name's come up for some gigs that would be like income bracket shifting, and they haven't happened, and that's okay. And so I've also just been like, I hope it happens, and if it doesn't, it's not what defines me.
Right.
So anyway, it got really serious, and it's like started looking at plane tickets. His business people got in touch and said, "Who's flying from where?" And we were going to record at Mark Knopfler's studio in London, but it was booked. So Clapton was like, "They won't move for me." I'm sure he wasn't like that. Sorry, his producer, his people. He's not like that. Well, at least I have never experienced any sort of anything close to that kind of attitude from him. Mm-mm. And then the next day, I packed a bag, just packed one carry-on, and flew from McGee Tyson to Heathrow. And they had I borrowed a bass from my friend Glenn Worf, who plays bass with Mark Knopfler. And it was just, I literally got off the airplane, got into a car. There was a guy with, Kimbro on a piece of paper. Right. Got into a car.
Very little car.
Drove
too,
me.
Probably.
Yeah, it was like a, a station wagon. It's nothing not important, but it's the little things you remember. Yeah. And I just no sleep because I was pretty amped, and pretty excited. And rolled up. I was the first one at Abbey Road, and I met the engineer and the recordist and the producer, and then the cartage guy who is Eric Clapton's tech. The cartage person is who brings the instruments in and gets that. And so I say, okay, what microphones would you like for the double bass? And I said, well, can I please have a Neumann 67 and an RCA 44, and I'd like to take a DI on the pickup for coverage. And it was just at that point, it just became a session.
Right.
That I've done.
Like you're just recording.
Yeah,
just doing your thing.
And what are the chords?
This is my job.
And then so I checked out the bass. It sounds great. Would you excuse me a minute? And I got a cup of coffee, and then I went upstairs through the control room too, where the Beatles cut Abbey Road like crazy, and went to the bathroom and took a sink shower.
Oh my God!
And changed clothes. And then by that time, the rest of the band was there. And we started getting sounds, and then Ronnie Wood walked in from the Rolling Stones, and he wanted to play with us, and so we did that. And then that was 2 days of that, and it was insane.
I mean, how do you do that though? You go from Bijou Theater in Knoxville, fucking Tennessee, to going to Abbey Road to record, and like all of these big names are walking through, and I'm sure that they're just humans.
They want the same thing that I want.
Sure,
it's like, could you please play a G whenever you're supposed to play a G?
Right.
And what's really cool that I've found with playing with whoever I've had the opportunity to play with is everybody, like once the door is closed and folks aren't asking for selfies or whatever.
Yeah.
It's
and the
like
session is on.
What people are really into is getting together and making a thing happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so Clapton was kind of in the center of the room and we were orbiting. It was really nice because we got to record with all of us in the same room. So you have a real interactive experience. So we're all contributing to what the arrangement should be. Or what if we change key, how about some chord subs on the third time through, or in the middle eight, we might go to this sort of dynamic level. So anyway, and that's exactly how Clapton or Ronnie Wood or whoever have been. They're just other people in the room.
Yeah.
And
just doing their job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what your job becomes then is not pointing out every time someone plays the chord change is wrong or whatever, because you're the dork that has a jazz degree. You know what I mean? Like, don't be that guy.
2 jazz degrees, right?
No, I have a strings degree and a jazz degree.
Okay.
Though I should amend that, and I should say that actually technically.
You should be like, I have more degrees than all of you.
No, that's not true. My wife does. But no, I just, I actually have one with a concentration, but it's kind of bullshit because they changed the way they were calculating the credit hours, and they're like, people are getting 2 degrees undergraduate from us, but they're not paying for 2, so we're going to make it a major and a constant. And they changed it literally like the semester before I graduated.
Of course they did.
But it's kind of my fault because it took me like 8 years to finish 4 years of college. So
is it your fault?
No.
Yeah.
No, it isn't.
Damn right it's not.
No, it isn't.
Damn right you.
Anyway, so yeah, Abbey Road was really cool.
Yeah.
I I hope the song comes out. It's funny. I got a rough mix of one of the tunes we did, and it sounded like crap.
Oh no.
Yeah.
What sounded wrong about it to your ears?
Everything, but also it's just like a zip file, compressed MP3. You know, here's what we did. So
it's gonna be shit regardless.
Yeah. You know, it'll be fine.
Right. It'll be bad. It'll butt
out.
It'll be okay.
Like I kind of don't care what it sounds like, and I just mean like I am proud of my being present for that experience. And I felt like I was in the room when I was in the room. You know?
Yes. So like
I was able to just
present,
be there.
not just like I'm a human occupying this space, but you were there.
Yeah, like I was, and I would think about, this is really cool, man.
Yeah,
you know,
good for
you.
you.
This is really cool. This might not happen again, that kind of thing. But I do hope that it gets some airplay and that I get some checks in the mail from it.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, we'll see.
Please send him the check. This is going to come out like 2 months later, so hopefully it does like actually happen before then.
I hope so.
But maybe if they see this, it'll encourage it.
Yeah. So, but you know, I like the variety. I like performing for people. And whether that's people that are listening in a control room or the other musicians in a room or in here, like I do get in my head about a Trailhead gig sometimes or about a Red Moon session. I definitely do. And I know that when the footage that we have shot of me by myself in this room playing those two instruments, I know that I'm going to cut it to pieces, but also I'm here for it. Like I'm here for it. Like this is what I do. And it's fucking brutal what my mind will do to itself. And it does it to itself while I'm trying to prepare for the things. And that makes preparing for these things so
much harder.
Yeah. But also like I'm not in like the Ukraine right now. So it's okay. And you know, I'm not being like shelled.
I can see your brain just bouncing.
Yeah.
That's fascinating to watch.
Yeah. Well, my psychologist thinks it's fascinating. But anyway,
you notice how I was not laughing at that? I'm like, yeah.
Well,
I get it.
Does, yeah.
You know, man, we've gone through a couple too.
Yeah. I got a really good one, man.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
good for you. Awesome. I think we all need one.
But anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is I love it. I love the Rymans and the Abbeys and the Trailheads and the Red Moons, and it's just like you just got to keep chasing the thing.
Yeah,
you just got to keep like trying to start little fires everywhere, because. What are you going to fucking quit and not say yes to a gig? I just don't have that thing. I mean, I'm getting better at saying no to the things that I don't want to do, but there are things that I want to do. I want to go to Trailhead and play with two of my favorite musicians.
Even
that's not
hyperbole.
The
shit out of
yeah.
You want to do it.
And the fear only lasts about as far as maybe the second song.
Probably.
You know, a lot of times. And it still happens to me. I turned 40 this year and that still happens. But I want to go play with Clint Mulligan and Josh Oliver because I absolutely love the way that they play music. And so, anyway, that's the transitions between the different size venues. Also, I don't feel like I've been doing that that long. I don't feel like I'm that far removed from pushing tanning beds out of the way with Dad, so that we can sing like a Gid Tanner and the Skill Diggers song. You know, I really don't. It's right there. Like playing my first gig. Like the first song at the first gig that I felt like I crushed was, I know. But it was Smoke on the Water at the West Hamlin County Volunteer Fire Department.
In that game. It's all right.
It was rad.
Yeah.
And I remember because instead of going when the bass enters, you know, bum, 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 I decided to go, bum, 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 bum.
Hell
did a big dive bomb.
Added your twang
and the keyboard player was like, oh, shit.
What the fuck was that?
Yeah. And that was it right there.
Yeah,
that's
you're
when
right.
I knew. I'm like, ha, bass players do have some sexual prowess.
Yes.
I mean, a modicum. Emphasis on the last three letters of that word.
It's the self-awareness for me.
Yeah.
I love that though. When
I hit my head, I have shelf-awareness.
Get out.
That's a dad
We're
joke.
done. This is the end of the interview. I love that I can see what is continuing through for each of those different experiences that you've had in those very different settings of playing. And I think it all comes down to presence.
Yeah.
Is that it?
I think so. It's something I feel like I struggle with, but I've gotten a lot better at lately, though. But
I think it goes both ways, too. Them being present with you and you being present with them.
I can't speak to the former, but I definitely practice for the latter.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard. Mm-hmm. It's easier with drugs, but I don't want to do those. Not always. So yeah, you know, I trying to be present, just trying to like, how can I help the other cats sound their best, you know? And I have in the Jerry Douglas band, I have three dear friends. I always say two. I think of the other two guys that aren't Jerry, but actually I've known Jerry I've been playing with him for 10 years now. Yeah. We're friends, and it's just odd for me because I've been a fan of progressive acoustic, bluegrass derived, folk derived music for a long time, and Jerry Douglas has been a musical hero of mine for a long time, and so it's still I still am kind of like, oh yeah, that's funny. I know that guy is, you know, pooping in a hotel room beside mine. Right. You know? Sorry, Jerry.
Every human poops, it's fine.
It's true.
It's fine.
But Mike Seal is the guitar player and Christian Settlemeyer is the violin or fiddle player. And I've been playing with Mike. Mike was a colleague of mine here in Knoxville at UT, and we played bluegrass together. He was playing dobro.
What is that?
Dobro is a slide guitar. That's what Jerry
cool.
Douglas plays. But and Mike's the electric guitar player or acoustic, whichever the tune calls for. And Mike is one of my favorite musicians, and he's one of my favorite people. And he's a really dear friend of mine, and it's cool that we're now in this band together. And he's so supportive of any effort that I make to bring any more of my real self to a performance or a recording session. And the same is true of Christian. And Christian is like, he is such a enabler of acting upon your intentions, you know, by doing that with his fiddle playing. And those are the kind of cats. I think of Clint Mulligan and Josh Oliver as those kind of people, and that's who I played with at Trailhead the other night. Those are the folks that I'm actively seeking these days.
Just bring your whole self.
Just bring your whole self. Don't hide anymore.
Yeah.
Like
you
it's
don't
okay.
have to.
Like I practiced for this gig, for this session today.
This gig.
It did, you know? Yeah. But man, I guess we were talking earlier, like, I guess you could call it imposter syndrome. I don't know. We live in the great age of self-diagnosis.
Oh yeah.
But like, I'm just going to take the electric bass and I'm going to sing these two new songs, and it's just going to be the voice and the bass, and I'm not going to do it perfectly. And this is the song though, man. I'm here to not care about the result because it has to be process oriented. If it's going to be anything like a long form game, like it, and that has to be, for me, the way it has to be long form. Yeah. So otherwise it's just too brutal. Yeah. The critic is too loud and brutal anyway.
It's okay.
Yeah. Those guys are so supportive. And so, I've learned a lot from them about presence. Good. You know?
Yeah. Sometimes we need to be taught that. I think we know it when we're born, and then we lose it, and then we have to be retaught it.
I don't have any.
Yeah.
I don't have any disagreement to add to that statement that you just made. Yeah.
Tell me about "Keep on Living." Where does that come from?
Yeah, it's kind of based on my parents. Speaking of,
okay, yeah, because it felt very personal.
Yeah, so I don't think I was an on purpose baby, and so I'm the oldest of three. Mm-hmm. And I'm the oldest by 4 years. Mm-hmm. So my two younger brothers, Corey and Jacob, who live here in town, are only 13 months apart. But so it was just we three for a minute, you know, and I don't remember a lot about that time. Obviously, I was, 0 to 4. But Dad was in the Army, and I had a few stories, but really I just filled in the blanks. It's loosely based on growing up in the Church of Christ. It's loosely based on them, but I took a lot of liberties. Like, there's a couple of girls that are the daughters, and there's none of the other stuff is like super accurate, apart from the bit about we're not doing Church of Christ anymore. That's kind of in the tune, but yeah.
So you weren't raised in that church, were you?
I was, and then wasn't. Like, there was a definite schism.
Yeah, right.
It was like
then and after.
I feel like I could be misremembering, but I think mom was maybe the catalyst. Was like, we're not going anymore.
Interesting.
I'm not going to tell my kids they're going to hell. That kind of thing. My mom's a powerful lady.
Yeah. She sounds like it. She sounds badass.
Yeah, she is. She is a badass. I'd tell that to her face.
Damn right. She needs to hear it more, I think.
I dropped my fidgety pen.
You got to have the fidget pen. Yep. It's over on the left side. Yeah.
But my grandfather was a Church of Christ preacher. My dad would sub in for him.
Wow.
A lot. And so the oration, and in the Church of Christ, my friend Meade Armstrong that I play music with.
Yeah, I love Meade.
Yeah.
Meade's beautiful.
So she grew
Great
up
human.
In the Church of Christ also, and we share that, and we share that like back and forth. One of the cool things about it is that there are no instruments allowed, so it's all just human voices singing.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So
that's not considered an instrument.
Right.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's every form of Christianity is cherry picking one of the testaments to their liking. So it's cool though to be in a relatively small room in Sneedville, Tennessee, over home, and be singing, Rock of Ages.
Yeah.
Out of some pretty old hymnals, and there's no instruments. And there's a really interesting thing that happens, and it's that people that don't sing well or even remotely on pitch by themselves in a room full of people, those voices come together and it becomes its own timbre. Myriad human voices together does not sound like a bunch of human voices together. It sounds like its own thing. You know what I mean? It's its own sound, and that is really, really cool.
That is.
And so that's a cool thing to grow up in.
It is, yeah.
And I think it's probably also just such great ear training.
Mm-hmm. I could see that too.
So yeah, those are the main things that I remember about my sort of religious upbringing, as it were.
Yeah.
And those are also, there's some great songs. Like I do miss singing hymns and stuff like that.
They're beautiful.
Jessica Watson and me and I have talked about it.
I love Jessica too. You're hearing all the really cool
Well, we have a
people
trio together called Legbeard.
Yeah, I think I actually saw you guys at Albright Grove.
Yeah, probably.
One time. And I think that's where we met first.
Okay.
I think, but
cool.
Also,
Yep. But
that was like 4 years ago at this point, so who knows?
Probably was, yeah.
Time is weird.
Time is weird.
It's okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that song is sort of based on my parents. I like to say that my parents' first date, this is all true, was a Van Halen concert. And they stayed together about as long as Van Halen did in its original iteration. It was odd having parents that split up when I was in college.
Yeah.
But because most of my friends that had separated or divorced parents went through that much younger.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah.
So,
or at least the knowledge that they were.
Yeah. I was like, oh well, we made it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of loosely based on them, but also not, and it's hypothetical in a lot of ways.
Where does your music come from?
Where does my music come from?
Yeah. Like, how does it come to you?
Okay. I don't know. It depends. A lot of times it's there's a hook in your head whenever you're mowing the grass or you're on a run or a long drive.
Yeah.
Or sometimes when you wake up, that one, I don't know. I don't remember when I wrote that one, but it happened really fast.
Yeah. It sounds like it.
Yeah. I have a bit of a tendency. I went through this phase. I feel like I'm coming out of it, where I wrote just basically raps. Like there's so many words crammed into a 3 or 4 minute song, but that's okay.
It's really hard to
story
sing,
songs
though.
It is
like perform.
It is, and story songs can be like that though. Anyway.
Yeah, but they're well worth it.
I hope so.
Yeah, being able to lock into every word and hear every bit of what you were saying.
I think that's also
gorgeous.
like thanks.
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that is just listening to a lot of some of the aforementioned Towns and Nancy and those kinds of people. There's a lot of storytelling in those things, and it's less introspective. And that's also maybe a safer way to get in.
Yeah, it's more observational than
it's less. It's less. You're not sharing such emotive things, maybe. And so, yeah, let's keep on living. And Chesapeake is very much like that too. It's a murder ballad.
I love that one too.
Murder ballads.
I was not expecting that.
No.
When you first start, no, I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't that, and I loved it.
Well, there's that dichotomy in Appalachian music. It's a pretty tune accompanied by some like pretty dark
shit.
Yeah. And that comes over came over on the boat, as it were.
Yeah, of course.
That's definitely not even like exclusive to Anglo music. But I do love that thing of a pretty melody with bad things happening. It's something about sad and dark songs makes you feel really good. I don't know what that is. I don't know why that is, but it probably doesn't speak well of my inner character, whatever that actually is. So those. I
don't think you're alone in that, though. If that makes you feel any better.
But then the other two songs that I sang are really, really new. The Brainstorm song is really... there was a tour that Martin Harley and I did duo in the UK where he was very, very ill. Very ill. And he had a throat infection and didn't know it. And we were like driving really far and the weather was terrible and I was exhausted and I started having anxiety attacks and I didn't know what they were at the time. And so that's what that's about. And then the Love Get To You song was just in my head a couple of weeks ago when I woke up and I went to the music room that I have in my house and wrote it down. And I was like, yeah, fuck it, I'll play that one today. And I've never really written anything like that before, and I really like it. Thank you very much.
Hell yeah.
So
damn right.
Yeah, it's cool. And I don't know why I decided to play those two on the electric bass, but I really like that bass.
It fits. It's
and
really cool.
I wanted
She's gorgeous too.
Thanks. Yeah,
she's absolutely beautiful.
There's a guy in town, Brad Gibson. He's awesome.
I've heard the name.
You probably have. Ben probably has too.
I'm sure Ben has. Ben's a big nerd.
But Brad is really good at finding vintage instruments and getting them into the hands of people that like to play instruments. And they're not always the vintage instruments that are so out of reach for many of us, which is a whole thing. But this is a 1966 Fender Coronado 1. There were Coronado 1s, which have one pickup, which is the thing that makes it go boom. And there are Coronado 2s, which have two pickups, and that's what the cheaters play. And there's another great cat in town called Steve Novelli, and he's a luthier. And I was going to play the guitar that Steve built for me today, but when I was changing strings, I broke one of the brand new strings, and I didn't have another set. And so I
decided for you.
Pretty much. Fine. But anyway, Steve put this pickup in it, which comes out of a Gibson Firebird guitar.
Yeah.
And that it's just this old funky hollow body, short scale, flat string, clunky bass kind of thing. And then
what's your favorite piece of equipment? Would it be that? I don't even know if that would be considered equipment, is it?
Yeah. I don't name my instruments or do anything like that. I don't assign them any sort of personality other than the one that they have. I'm grateful that they used to be living things.
Yes.
Trees are living things. That's cool. But I don't get too precious about them. They're tools.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I have a favorite one, honestly. This one's one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah, I can feel that.
You get to
just the way you talk about it.
You get to a place with music where you start buying instruments because of the way they make you play as opposed to the way that you play them.
Yeah, I can see that.
And that's a good thing.
It's cool.
This hilariously simple PV stack that I'm playing through, my brother works at a local music shop that has... Well, it's a band. They're first and foremost like a band supply, band instruments. And he was digging around in the basement. And he says, "Hey, I heard you talking about those old Shure, what are they called? Vocal Masters, Shure Vocal Master PA systems. And I have like a PV version of that. You should come check it out. It's like in Tolex covers, like it's brand new, but it's from the 70s. And so I went and checked it out. And as soon as I saw it, I said, does it have reverb? And he said, yes. And I said, I'm very interested because the spring reverbs on these like 70s units are so good.
Yeah.
And so it's a little weird to have, I guess, to have a bass going through a spring reverb, but I really like it. And that's what put the banjo through too. And it's just kind of a funky sound that gives it just a little bit of a different angle. Really, it just gives me permission to play things a little bit differently.
Yep.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It makes me play a little bit differently. I don't feel like I have to be so accurate and so jazz school.
Yeah.
and
You just do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
cool.
that's just the permission that it gives me. So anyway, so the banjo is a Pisgah banjo company, banjo, which they're over near Asheville in Transylvania County, I think. I really like this banjo. I found it on Instagram, which is pretty millennial.
It's very millennial of you.
Yeah. But they had actually put a different banjo up and said, hey, someone ordered this banjo and they've canceled. And I called and they said, actually, that one already sold, but do we have another one? If you liked that vibe, you might. I said, well, I'm coming over anyway. So I drove over and I bought this banjo with the tax return. And it's persimmon and walnut, which is really cool because
really cool.
Yeah, my granddad's place in Mooresburg, Tennessee, on Cherokee Lake, there were some persimmon trees. And so that kind of, persimmon is in the ebony family, by the way.
Too. That's beautiful.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. And it has a funky sound to it, and also because it has nylon strings on, and then also because I'm running it through a 1970s PA system with some cool sound and reverb.
Yep.
And if you plug it into a coily white cord, it sounds even better. That's
nice.
That's not
through
real.
Trial and error.
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
that was sarcasm.
Damn it!
I know.
You're supposed to do the wink.
I know. I forgot.
It's all right. It's fine. You can't remember everything. It's
no,
okay.
I can't remember anything.
Yeah. So speaking of your babies, let's go to the human babies.
Yeah.
Because you're a dad.
I am. I have 2 children.
That's crazy.
I have 2 children that I know about. One is named. No, that's not true. Ella is my daughter. She's 17. She's a great singer, and mostly she's just cool. She's way cooler than I am.
Yeah.
And I like her. I happen to be in this position where I actually like the people that my kids are, as opposed to just
Isn't that
liking
so
them.
cool?
It is very cool. They're smart asses, but I like them. And then my son's 13. His name is Tuck. And they're both musical. You know. My wife Tiffany is a band director in town. She teaches at Halls Middle School, and so I don't know. We've been pretty deliberate about like exposing them to music, but not
like forcing them into it. Yeah.
When they ask for something, they're into it.
I'm always curious.
We'll get them in.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's good of you. I think that's very
I guess
smart.
that's the choice
You're
we
just
made.
doing your thing. Yeah. It's neither good nor bad. What has it been like raising kids in? Because it feels like you were very in tune to the atmosphere that is kind of happening, the political atmosphere. It feels like you are very aware of the challenges that people are facing on a daily basis. And I think you are very aware of your own privilege.
Yeah.
What has that been like to raise 2 children? I mean, especially an AFAB human, right?
Yeah.
Assigned female at birth. So what has that been like for you?
I don't know because I don't have anything to compare it against.
Yeah,
and I
fair.
think parenting is like that. I think that everything that happens when you're a parent is the first time it happens.
Yep.
You know, and I just think I think the best thing that one can do is I don't know how this is going to sound.
It's okay.
You don't
Just go for it.
You don't change everything about your life to accommodate the children that you are having or have had. You integrate them into the things that you like to do and the things that you're already doing.
Yeah.
You make adjustments, but you don't, they're pivots. They're not changes of scenery or whatever. I'm like mixing so many metaphors.
No, it's okay.
But so what has it been like? There are things that are terrifying, but I also happen to know that they are very empathetic, open-minded, thinking before they speak people. And I would like to think that I could take some credit for that. But honestly, my wife is such a monster educator. I mean, really, she is. Like, her pedagogical skills and awareness are just astronomically high. Yeah. And so I think that she probably deserves a lot of the credit for that. And also because I'm a touring musician, so I'm home and I try to make positive impacts. And I'm home a lot. And when I'm home, I'm home.
Yeah.
But it hasn't always been that way. There've been side jobs. There have been hiatuses. There have been whatever so that I've been home. And so I do deserve some credit, but Tiffany's just outstandingly great at raising humans and plants. So
hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And also I just like them. They're great. But yeah, I have my worries and I have my fears and I have my concerns about the future socio-political environment, but I think that's what everybody has. And so I think talking about it in a space that people might be going to escape from that is a bit poor form sometimes, honestly.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of this with us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having
appreciate
me.
Appreciate it.
It's really cool.
Thank you.
It's like the Wayne's. Maybe I'm dating myself.
Wayne's World.
Well, here's because you come downstairs to the basement, and like it's quite small.
Yes,
and,
it is.
When I was checking out the Red Moon sessions, I was watching like Quinters and a couple of others, and it's like, oh, it's a fairly large space. But
there's
the camera,
so much room for activities.
There's so much. Yeah, right.
There's not.
But you always I've noticed this in every studio space I've been in where there's video going down.
Yeah.
Like for some reason your brain assigns like so many feet behind a camera that don't exist.
Yeah, it's not real. Nothing's real. It's fine.
No. We're in a 3-foot box.
Truly.
It's a TARDIS.
Yes. Yeah. There you go. Except they can't take you anywhere
lenses.
cool.
Yeah.
It's fine. I know we talked about this earlier, but where can people find and access you?
Yeah, the best way to do it is social
okay.
media. Like
don't apologize
I'm pretty active
for that.
on
Listen,
Instagram.
It's a tool. It's okay.
It is.
Okay.
It is a tool. Most of my listening constituents interact with me on Facebook if they are over a certain age, and then under. I thought for the longest time that my storytelling-y kind of songs only applied to people of a certain age, and there's nothing bad about that apart from the fact that I thought, well, no one's going to buy my shit if they're all dead. No offense, anyone. But recently, with the Harley Kimbro Lewis thing and some of my other efforts, I've got like some high school kids being into it.
Just goes across the board.
Yeah,
it's ways to access
it feels
you.
really feels good to me. Also,
Yeah.
I think every human creator has a desire to be evergreen.
Yeah, of course. I can see that.
So that feels affirming.
Yes.
But finding my music is social media. Social media.
It's very Appalachian of you.
Well, if the shoe fits.
Wow.
But yeah, man, I've done a record. All it needs is out.
Yes.
So I just have to get it mastered. So I'm trying to figure out how to raise money for that because stuff is expensive.
What's your Venmo?
It's Daniel Kimbro Bass.
Cool.
DanielKimbro ass.
Damn right.
And you can just email me.
Man.
Yeah, Venmo brother. Yeah, this is wonderful. This is really cool. It's been nice getting to know you and Ben and Cody and Joseph.
Nice job. You did it. You're doing great work.
Thanks.
And even if you're afraid to show people what you do personally,
Thanks.
It's worth it.
Thank you.
And you're doing good shit.
I'm going to keep putting it out there.
Keep doing it.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Care. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Yeah.